This is the story called Brian Kaslow. Before I tell that story, I want to talk a little bit about disciples. Disciples are people who either come to my live shows or people who watch my videos on YouTube. Everyone who watches my video on YouTube is a disciple. The first 12 disciples are also considered apostles. And right now I have 3 disciples, a girl named Carolyn Moorhead, and then my friend Emma, and my friend Yvonne. All are my disciples. When I go online and I talk about my disciples, I'm going to say my disciples have a mission. And the mission is to track down the people who are in my story and get an update, find out where they are today, have they survived, and bring it all together. Brian Kaslow is one of those people. I met Brian Kaslow when I was a sophomore in high school, 16 years old, 15. He went to the same Sunday school that I went to. It was called United Hebrew. And there were probably 30 students in the 10th grade class, which was, they called it the confirmation class. So at the end of 10th grade, you went to a confirmation ceremony, which is like a graduation, and then you were done with Sunday school. So in 10th grade, Sunday school stopped. But during that sophomore year, that 10th grade year, we had 2 retreats where we would go, the entire group of students went to a summer camp that was available because this was during the school year. So we stayed in cabins, just like you imagine going to sleepaway camp. Every cabin had that musty mold smell that you smell when you go to camps. And Brian Kaslow was there. Brian Kaslow, I would call him the king of the burnouts. Burnout was the word that we used in Ladue to describe people who smoke pot and hang outside the building smoking cigarettes. Brian Kaslow was the king of the burnouts. He was a big guy, good-looking guy. He had curly hair, wore a bandana, wore flannel shirts. That was like the uniform. Hiking boots. You can look this up. Hiking boots. That's what they all wore. Hiking boots. All the burnouts, and jeans. And I knew. I didn't go to school with him, but I mean, he wasn't at the same high school I was at. But I met him through this confirmation class. I knew that he smoked pot. I mean, he obviously looked like a guy who smoked pot. He had a friend, a guy named Mike, who was also a burnout, but not as good looking, not as charismatic as Brian Kaslow. One day we were on this retreat, and I was talking to Brian Kaslow, and I was complaining. I must have been complaining about the fact that I don't have a girlfriend. I was in 10th grade. I'd never had a girlfriend, and I was complaining about it. And Brian Kaslow said to me, he goes, I'm going to give you his exact quote. He said, "Everybody gets their rocks off eventually. Everybody gets their rocks off eventually." And I really appreciated the way he added "eventually" to the end of the sentence, because that's a 5-syllable word. That's the kind of word that my dad would use. My dad was a lawyer. He would always say things like "eventually." So I really appreciated Brian for saying that. He also had other expressions he used, like when he talked about his music, he called his music his jams. And if something was done, if he was using something, he would say it was played. So for example, when he was listening to his jams on his radio, his batteries ran out. So Brian Kaslow said, "Man, I can't listen to my jams because my batteries are played." Okay, so he got jams and played in the same sentence. So one night, this is like the second or third night that we were there, Brian was in one cabin, I was in the next cabin. There was his friend Mike, who was another burnout, and this third guy named Derek Lansbaum. They were all in the same cabin together. And Derek Lansbaum was a big guy, but he was kind of a nerd. He wore glasses, he had pimply skin. And for some reason, his friend Mike, not Brian, but the friend Mike, was taunting this other guy, whose name I cannot remember right now, but Derek Lansbaum. Mike was going like this. He was saying, "I'm Derek Lansbaum. I'm a big fat nerd." Ha, like that. He was taunting this guy, Derek Lansbaum. The whole time, Brian Kaslow was laying in bed in his cot with his sheets pulled up to his neck, smiling. He was watching this whole scene play out. So this guy, Mike, is making all these comments about Derek Lansbaum. I'm Derek Lansbaum. I'm a big idiot, like this. So Derek Lansbaum gets up, and he walks up to this guy, Mike, and he shoves him like this, shoves him with both hands. And Mike fell backwards, there was a cot, like without a mattress on it. It's like a wire metal cot there, and then another one. And he fell backwards and he got caught between these two cots. So his arms and his legs were sticking up in the air, and he was like flailing around trying to get out of this spot that he was stuck in. So we got out of the spot, and he like approached Derek Lansbaum like they were going to fight. Well, Derek Lansbaum, like I said, he was a big guy. He picked up this cot off the ground like this and went thump and put it in front of him like a shield. Okay, it made this huge thump sound because the ground was, or the floor was like 2 feet off the ground. It's like this, thump. And then the fight stopped, and everybody went their separate ways. I went back to my cabin, and this guy, well, first of all, Derek Lansbaum said, I'm not going to sleep in this cabin with this guy Mike, who's been harassing me. I'm going to sleep in your cabin. So we had one empty bunk, so we let Derek Lansbaum come over and sleep in our bunk. There was this other kid, little short kid, shorter than me. His name was Andy Diamond. Andy Diamond. Andy Diamond had braces. And every time Andy Diamond spoke, he spit. He spit on whoever he was talking to. And the more excited he got, the more he spit. So he's in the cabin with Derek Lansbaum and Mike and Brian Kaslow. He comes over to our cabin, and he's dragging his blanket with him. There's no more cots. We told him, if you want to sleep here, you're going to sleep on the floor. So he comes over, and he comes into our cabin, and he's talking. He's saying, I'm not going to sleep in that cabin. That guy's crazy. I'm not going to blah, 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 like that. The whole time he's just spraying saliva everywhere. And whenever I tell the story, I always spit at that point to give the audience the full effect. But since we're on camera, there's no need for me to spit. So anyways, Andy Diamond came in, and he spent that night in our room. Fast forward. By the way, my friend was named Larry Dobkin. He was another friend of mine who was on that trip at the same time. Fast forward. Junior in college. Now we're talking 4 or 5 years later. I'm roommates with Larry Dobkin, the same guy that was in that confirmation class. We have an apartment in Columbia, Missouri, where Mizzou was. One night, and Larry Dobkin, I think that's what her name, Larry Dobkin, had a girlfriend named Kathy, really pretty girl, total shiksa, okay, but really pretty. And one night I come home, and Larry's there, Larry Dobkin and Kathy, and there's another couple, a guy and a girl, sitting on my sofa, and they're talking, they're friends. I didn't recognize them. I didn't know the guy, I didn't know the girl. But the girl was very pretty. And I figured, well, because Kathy's pretty, she probably has pretty friends. Pretty girls like to associate with each other. But this guy, I didn't know. I didn't know who this guy was. He was tall, good-looking guy, broad shoulders. He looked like an athlete to me. I mean, he looked like a guy who was really athletic. Didn't say a word. Didn't open his mouth the whole time. I'm thinking, wow, this guy's cool. This guy is cool. So as we're talking, as we're going around the room, we're talking, and I come to the realization. I realized that this guy sitting on my couch, this good-looking guy with this beautiful arm around this beautiful girl, was Andy Diamond, the same kid who, when he was a sophomore, was spraying everybody with his saliva. I mean, he'd grown like 6 inches since high school, and now he was like this totally cool, chill, guy. I couldn't believe it. And I thought to myself, I could have told that story in front of him and his girlfriend, in front of Larry, and Larry would have remembered because he was there. But I decided not to. I said, you know what? Nothing good would come from me telling that story. The worst thing that happened is his girlfriend could be embarrassed that he'd done this. So I never told the story. But that's the story of Brian Kaslow. Don't forget to read my book, Broccoli Time by Dante Allen, available now on Amazon Books.